This is Malik Yakini, and proud to present to you online the 43rd annual celebration of September is Black Reading Month. We've been doing this since 1980, when the Black Reading Month Committee was formed in Detroit by myself, Nkechi Yakini, and Osei Nkele, David Rambo, and Helen Ray. For the past 3 years, we've been doing this annual observance online because of the COVID pandemic. And we found that it's kind of a nice format and we can reach people outside of Detroit. So we welcome you to this first in a series of author talks by important Black authors for Black Reading Month. So the celebration of Black Reading Month began in September of 1980. And at that time, several of the founders were involved in distributing Black books and magazines around the city of Detroit. And we found that when we leave books and magazines on consignment and we come back at the end of the month, that most of those books and magazines would still be there. That Black folks just weren't reading these books that we thought were important titles that helped us to conceptualize our position in the society and in the world and helped us to move towards liberation. So Black Reading Month was created to create a time of the year. In fact, September is the top book selling month because of so many students going back to school. So September was designated as Black Reading Month in order to develop within our people the habit of reading Black literature and specifically reading books written by Black authors, whenever possible, published by Black publishers and sold on the retail level by Black bookstores. We're interested in what we call the complete cycle of Black reading. We want to control that entire process. In fact, co-founder David Rambo last year coined the term Black literary sovereignty. We started in 1980 with the slogan, Black reading is crucial for Black survival, and Black reading continues to be crucial for Black survival. The only way as a people we can move forward in a way which is sane and self-determining is if we are ourselves rooted in an understanding of the history and the culture of our people. And the best way to gain that understanding is to read the literature that has emerged from the writers from our culture. And I'll make that broader, and when I say our culture, and say that really we're referring to the cultures of African people worldwide. So 1980, we began by having events like book fairs, writing contest, reading contest in schools, and continued those activities each year annually in September. In 1985, Njia Kai joined the Black Reading Month Committee and initiated the Turn Off the TV Challenge, a challenge where during the month of September, we asked people to go for the entire 30 days without watching television unless, and this is the small kind of loophole, unless you're watching something that specifically pertains to the development of Black people. But we want to break the habit of mindless TV watching during the month of September. It's kind of a fast, in fact. So we want to break that habit of mindless TV watching during September so that we can carry that habit throughout the rest of the year with us. Similarly, during the month of September, we encourage people to read at least one book by a Black author. And for a similar purpose, we're hoping that if people develop that habit during the month of September, that it will be something that they carry with them for the other 12 months of the year. Now, clearly, we know that Black reading is important every month of the year, every week, every day. Black reading is crucial for Black survival. September is a time where we highlight that habit. And again, we want to develop that habit so that we can carry it with us for the rest of the year. So we are now celebrating the 43rd annual observance of September is Black Reading Month. I want to give a big shout out to David Rambo, who I don't think is with us today. I want to give a shout out to Nkechi Yakini, one of the co-founders. I saw her in the participants list. A big shout out to all the folks from Detroit. We see several people from Detroit, and also wherever you might be. We see some folks in Newark and Staten Island, wherever you might be. We thank you for joining us. And we want to let you know that also, although there are few of us online live tonight, that this will be posted to YouTube and will be posted to Facebook, and many hundreds of people will see this after our live session tonight. So this year, 2022, for the celebration of Black Reading Month, we have a 4-part series, and I'm so happy that this year the co-hosting duties are being shared between myself and my good brother, Dr. Michael Simanga, who is originally from Detroit, but has lived in Atlanta for the last 40 years or so. And Dr. Simanga is both a scholar and a renowned activist, has been involved with both writing and publishing for a number of years. We will be kicking off the series tonight with me talking with Nkechi Taifa about the various books that she's written, and then we'll follow that series up with part 2 next Wednesday with Dr. Michael Simanga talking with Dr. Keith Gilliard, who is an expert on the use of language by Black people. The following Wednesday, September 21st, we'll have a longtime Washington, D.C. resident, but Detroit native, we're still claiming her, Dr. Nubia Kai, and we'll talk about the various types of writing that she has done over the years, the poetry, the novelettes, the novel, and this epic that she has created. And then finally, we'll end the series on Wednesday, September 28th with Dr. Simanga talking with Farah Jasmine Griffin. So we invite you to join us for the entire series. After this session tonight, the link will be posted for the session next week. We want you to tell your friends and family to join us. We're going to start in just a minute the conversation with Nkechi Taifa, and I'll talk to her for about 45 minutes or so, and then we're going to open up for questions and answers. And when we open up, we like you to put your question in the chat box, and then or put in the chat that you'd like to ask a question. And then when it comes time to ask that question, we'll unmute your mic and make your camera enabled so that you can ask your question directly. I'm so pleased to have this sister with us tonight. I don't know if she remembers when I first met her, but I first met Nkechi Taifa in about 1966. 1976, excuse me. I went back a decade, 1976 or 1977. She was actually in Detroit for Teacher Training Institute. She was working with an African-centered school in Washington, D.C., and several of us in Detroit were affiliated with the Alexander Crummell Affirmative School. But to tell you the truth, just truth be told, so several of us young brothers, I think I was 20 at the time, we heard that these conscious sisters were in town for this TTI. We didn't so much know what TTI was, but we were drawn to try to meet these sisters who were in town from various places around the city. So young brothers, don't follow that example, but I'm just telling you how the history evolved. And so since that time, I've watched mostly from afar the incredible work that our sister has done. And I would like to read her whole bio to you, but to paraphrase Beyonce, her bio's too big, experience too long. It's just she's done too much. She's done too much for me to read the entire thing. She's been so kind to have a truncated bio that is entitled The Bio for Introductions, which just hits on some of the incredible things that she's done. Nkechi Taifa is a civil and human rights attorney, scholar, activist, and author. She is president of the Reparation Education Project Incorporated and the Taifa Group LLC, and serves as senior fellow for the Center of Justice at Columbia University. A visionary thought leader and nationally recognized expert and commentator on race and justice issues, Taifa has served as commissioner and chair of the DC Commission on Human Rights. She has worked for the Open Society Foundations, Howard University School of Law, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Women's Legal Defense Fund, National Prison Project, and as an attorney in private practice. Nkechi is a founding member of NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and an inaugural commissioner on the National African American Reparations Commission. A native Washingtonian, Nkechi is the author of the best-selling memoir, Black Power, Black Lawyer, My Audacious Quest for Justice. She's the author of several books for children and has an upcoming book, Reparations on Fire, How and Why It's Spreading Across America. Taifa has testified before the United States Congress, the DC City Council, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, the U.S. Helsinki Commission, the Maryland Legislature, and the California Reparations Task Force. Taifa is the author of scores of scholarly works, including law review articles, book chapters, and white papers. She's been featured in major print and electronic media and has received numerous honors and awards for her work, including Essence Magazine's Woke 100 Black Women Advocating for Change. I'm so proud to be talking with my sister and comrade, Nkechi Taifa. Thank you. Welcome. Peace.
Brother Malik, I am thrilled to be here with you. It has been many, many, many decades. And I remember meeting you in 1977 at TTI, Teacher Training Institute in Detroit. And I didn't know the brothers were over there looking at the sisters. Yeah. We were supposed to be there learning about independent Black education and teaching our Watoto, our young people. But
that's
it was
what y'all was doing. That's what y'all was doing.
But it was wonderful meeting you back then. And actually, I have watched you with awe over the decades as well, and all the work you've been doing with food sovereignty and cooperatives and all of that. I say, I know that brother. I know that brother. You know what I'm saying? And then when I found out your daughter's name had the same name that I had, I said, all right. Taifa, am I right?
That's right. That's right. That's my daughter's first name.
Yeah. So it's been a wonderful journey. You're in Detroit, I've been in DC, but I've been following you as well, my brother.
Yeah, and you have comrades here in Detroit. Of course, I want to shout out Sister Shoshana Shakur, my brother Chokwe Lumumba's sister, who is holding down the Malcolm X grassroots movement, along with others here in the city of Detroit. And I think she's joining us today, but she's had you on various programs, and so folks in Detroit know about you largely because of Shoshana's work over the last few years.
Shoshana is absolutely phenomenal, and I can't wait for her book to come out about her brother Chokwe Lumumba. I mean, I'm an ancestor who actually served as my legal mentor in the struggle. So waiting for that. Can't wait.
I actually met Shoshana before I met you. Shoshana's a little older than me. She likes to fabricate that and tell people I'm older than her. But we actually graduated from the same high school. She graduated maybe a year or so before me, but I was familiar with her as an activist. So Shoshana is an activist in her own right and has her own story to tell. So I hope when she writes that book, it's not only about her brother, but also she includes her incredible and ongoing life of activism.
Absolutely.
So we want to focus on books and writing and things like that since it's Black Reading Month. But we also want to kind of get into you and what makes you tick and what motivates you and what's your background and what are the ideas that that stir you. We want to get into that as well. And this will be a free-flowing conversation. We'll go in the direction it goes. But I want to start. You are a native Washingtonian, and I don't know exactly how old you are, and I'm not going to ask, but I know we're kind of in the same generation. So I'm assuming that the same social forces that influenced me as I was a young teenager had the similar impact on you. I wonder if you can talk about what was your growing up like in Washington, D.C.?
Okay, so yes, I am the child of educators. Okay, so there were always books around. Okay, and I grew up during what I call the Black Power era, kind of after the civil rights, and so it was more so the Malcolm X that moved and grew me. It was a Black Power, I'm Black and I'm proud, the Black Panther Party, all of those were things that moved and grew me. I used to sell Black Panther Party newspapers on the streets of Washington, D.C. as a teenager. I was never a Panther. I just, like I said, like sitting on the lap of that fine brother who was sitting in the front office, who was supposed to be pulling security. But I used to go downtown with them every weekend to sell Black Panther Party newspapers. So as a young person, I was politicized, I guess you could say. I remember I could not wait to take Black Studies. Black Studies was just coming into the classrooms. In my 8th grade classroom, they just started Black Studies. And there was this poster on the wall of the bulletin board of this Black man with a black beret in his head, with a spear in one hand and a rifle in another hand, sitting in that Grand Slam wicker chair. And all the teenage girls in my class were talking about how fine this brother was. And I kept asking the teacher, well, why is he in prison? And why is he being represented by white lawyers? I was saying, where are the Black lawyers to represent Black people? This was back in
So we had a small technical problem, but we want to go back to what we were discussing, which was your childhood in DC. And I wonder if you can recap all of that. You were telling us about selling Black Panther newspapers as a young person. So we want to dig into your early childhood, what sparked your consciousness initially.
Well, even earlier than that, I'm sitting in the den of my parents' home, flipping through this book called A Pictorial History of the Negro in America. And I'm flipping through and I see this a story that just struck me. And it was the story of this 14-year-old boy who, from Chicago, who was lynched and found at the bottom of Mississippi's Tallahatchie River. And of course, it was Emmett Till. And the reason why it left such an imprint on me, because I was 5 months old when that incident occurred. Okay. And I used to think that things like that, you know, slavery, lynchings, discrimination, Jim Crow happened way back,
long
like millions of years. I had no concept of time. And then later on, I'm learning, well, gosh, I was just in kindergarten when Fannie Lou Hamer was beat to within an inch of her life. See, all of these things happened in my lifetime. So as a teenager, I'm reflecting back on that. And I'm saying, well, you know, we have not arrived. I mean, you know, there's still a whole lot of work to be done. And I wanted to be part of that work that was going to be doing what was going to be done. Yeah. So that's how I got involved with selling Black Panther papers. I was a secretary, actually first babysitter for the founders of an organization in Washington that was called Black Land Movement. And they had a newspaper that they called Black Land News Magazine. And it was next door to where another newspaper was being printed called Third World News or something along those lines. So I had with all of these revolutionary papers. And when I was the secretary for Black Land News Magazine, again, I'm a teenager now, they had Black Scholars news magazines. They had information from the East, Tim Claver. They had all of these information, the Free to Land newspaper, the Republican New Effort, all of these things was inundating within me when I'm a teenager, just by mere the fact that I was in that, you know, environment. So when I later on became involved with the Temple of the Black Messiah, I think they were similar to the Shrine of the Black Madonna in Detroit, but in DC it was Reverend Shakamusa Baba Shango with the Temple of the Black Messiah.
I thought he was in Philadelphia. He was in DC.
But that was later. He was in DC.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that was where I got my underpinnings. We had Kwanzaa there every single year. He published the very first book that I had. I keep forgetting about that one, called New African Children of the Sun. I got 6 books now instead of 5. I keep saying 5. That was basically a coloring book. But yeah, Temple of the Black Messiah. I write about that in my memoir, Black Power, Black Lawyer, because he had a tremendous impact. You know, I mean, that's when I first heard about Marcus Garvey. You know, again, I'm in my late teens, you know, and all like that. And so again, these are some of my growing ups, I guess you could say, my underpinnings, what kind of helped to shape me into the revolutionary that I am. Okay, never strayed from it. But then, Brother Malik, as a college student, I was a history major, education minor at Howard University. And in there was a lecture that was being held. It was not by a professor or anything like that. It was like an outside speaker. came in. To this day, I don't know who the brother was, but he was talking about the 13th and 14th Amendments to the United States. And that perked me up because I was a history major. And he said that the 13th Amendment freed you, but the 14th Amendment could not have made you a citizen of the United States because you had to have been asked if you wanted to be a citizen, and we would never ask. Because our rights under international law after the enslavement period was that we had international law rights to self-determination, and we were not asked. Citizenship was merely thrust upon us, despite the fact that they raped our mothers and lynched our fathers and sold the children off to the relatives. Again, they didn't ask us if we wanted to join this new white nation, didn't ask us if we wanted to go back somewhere else, to Africa, to Haiti, or to Jamaica, didn't ask us if we wanted to form our own nation, our own family. And so that left an impact on me, which is how I eventually became part of the Republic of New Africa, which was, again, part of the underpinnings of my young part of the struggle.
Of course, being from Detroit, we had lots of those teachings about the 13th and 14th Amendment from Brother Chimba Omari was the first one I heard talk about that. I want to lift up his name, and of course, Brother Chokwe and many other people. So Nkechi, during that time period, and again, we're relatively in the same age. I'll try to pinpoint your age by you talking about how old you were when you read about I'm sorry.
How old I was when Emmett Till was lynched.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But again, we're in the same kind of general age range. And what I found is that 1969, 1970, everybody was like, Black Power. We all had afros. We all had blue jean jackets. But by 1972, 73, a lot of people had kind of drifted off into the mainstream. What is it that has had you so steadfast for more than 50 years when I'm sure many of your other peers have gone off in all kind of directions?
Yeah, so when I went to Howard in 1973, I said, God dang, the revolution is gone. It's over. I mean, they took over the A building in 68, and where's all the revolution? So I spent most of my time in college in the DC community as opposed to on campus. Again, Temple of the Black Messiah, Ujamaa Shule. I became involved with the independent Black school movement, Watoto School, Nation House. I had my own independent school, Saturday school, the Imario Badeli New African Shule. So I was involved with CB, Council of Independent Black Institutions. And I was involved with the Black Women's United Front and the February 1st movement and the African Liberation Support Committee, and all like that. But I was, I never strayed from the things that I was moved and grew with as a teenager. I never have strayed, and I'm still there, today, even though I've become a lawyer and, you have different hats that you wear for different things, but I've always tried to maintain my authenticity, and people could either accept it or not. African name. I adopted my African name when I was 16 years old, plucked it out of African names book. I didn't know that people were supposed to give you an African name and you have a ceremony and all like that. That's why I don't pronounce my name correctly today, because I went in Drum and Spear bookstore and I saw this name. It looked like it said Nkechi. That's what it looked like to me. I didn't know anything about Nkume at that time. I didn't know that the N had the N sound instead of the N sound, and the E had the A sound. And I didn't know all of that. So later on, once I found out, I really did try to say Nkechi. And I know, Brother Mark, people call me Nkechi and Nkechi, but it's like, I just, that vibration of Nkechi just kind of stayed with me. And I just rationalized, well, our tongues have been colonized and I'm a new African, another branch of the African family on this side of the ocean. We've been through trauma and, brainwashing and all like that.
You're saying it jokingly, but I think that's a legitimate argument, frankly.
Yeah. No, you're right. It is.
The language evolves, right? And so, the way a name is pronounced in Mali might be slightly different than the way it's pronounced in Senegal, but language is dynamic. And as you said, as a people here, we have that same right to help language evolve.
Self-determination.
That's right. So how did you how did you get into writing? When did you discover that you had a passion and a talent for writing?
Well, I'm not sure how much of a talent I have, but I have a passion. I mean, actually, during the time when I was teaching at Nation House Watoto, we were developing a lot of our own materials, because it wasn't like you walk through the bookstores today and you see all of the beautiful, colorful children's books and they just adorn all of the shelf. There wasn't a whole lot of that. I mean, there was Sharon Bell Mathis's books, there was Eloise Greenfield, there was Lucille Clifton, but by and large, Sonia St. Chairs, wrote some children's books. But by and large, there wasn't a whole lot of nothing back there. So I started compiling my own teaching materials, and I did what I call story poems. And again, there wasn't, you knew about Martin Luther King, you knew about Frederick Douglass, but people didn't know about Denmark Vesey and Joseph Q and not even much in terms of Malcolm X or Paul Robeson and the like, Harriet Tubman. We knew a little bit about Harriet, but not that much. Fannie Lou Hamer, nothing. A little bit about Rosa Parks. So I started to put a lot of those Black heroes and heroines into my book, which actually was published first in 1983, Shining Legacy, Story Poems for the Young. So Black heroes forever will be sung. And
I'm going to ask you if you read one of those story, or an excerpt maybe from one of those story poems.
Sure.
And I just also want to endorse it and say that when I was running in Soderman Institute, an African Center School in Detroit, that was a favorite. That book was a favorite. Thank you for writing.
And this was Kitchen Tabletop Publishing.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying, and I still do that today. Let me try Marcus Garvey. Can I do that?
Yeah.
And I do that because I'm a dear friend of Dr. Julius Garvey, Marcus Garvey's youngest son, and we are striving very hard for an exoneration for his father. So I'm working very closely with him. The mighty Marcus Garvey, if you have ever seen, was the proud Black man with the red, black, and green. The mighty Marcus Garvey had a lot of pride. Millions of Black folk were on his side. He sailed from Jamaica to New York City. He organized a group in the 1920s, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. To millions was a great inspiration. He had the Black Cross nurses that worked so fine, the Black Legionnaires and the Black Star Line. The Black Star Line was the name of the ships. They would trade with Black nations and make many trips. The Black Legionnaires was the army to be. They trained to fight to set Black people free. The mighty Marcus Garvey had big parades. The foundations of our nation was being laid. The mighty Marcus Garvey had a lot of pride. Millions of Black folk were on his side. He said, African people were a mighty race, but we need once more a mighty land base. Let Africa be our guiding star. Then we'll know that freedom won't be far. But some brainwashed Blacks turned up their nose. The racist court system said, Garvey's got to go. Back to Jamaica, he was finally sent. But as he went, he left us this hint. Look for me in the whirlwind, he said. Look for me in the storm. Look for me all around you, for my spirit will bring freedom to form. The mighty Marcus Garvey, if you have ever seen, was the proud Black man with the red, black, and green. Millions of Black folk were on his side because the mighty Marcus Garvey had a lot of pride, because the mighty Marcus Garvey had a lot of pride, because the mighty Marcus Garvey had a lot of pride. So they were teaching tools for the children in rhyme, because rhyme helps you remember certain things, like the rap of today, right?
I was going to ask you this question later, but I want to ask now. What is the relationship of music to your writing?
Well, actually, another piece that I did was While Malcolm Preached, Train Played. And I wrote that because it was my observation that when the music was strong, the people were strong. When the music was, up there, it was said, While Malcolm Preached, Train Played, and all of the stuff that was going on during that time, the music and the politics were like fusing, together. And I think that there's a lot to that. Okay, the music some of the music, I mean, I hate to say it, that you hear today isn't necessarily the.
Don't bite your tongue. Don't bite your tongue. Come on, let's have it.
I just did a thing for this brother in Spain about public enemy and the consciousness. Well, there was consciousness then with rap, but then it morphed into something else. And actually, I did a children's porn, and John Coltrane played all that jazz, and an adult one while Malcolm Train played. And the concept was the same in both. When the music is strong, the people is strong. When the music is strong, when the people are strong, to be something like that, you know. Yeah. But it was, yeah.
So you've written 2 other children's books as well, right?
Yes, I wrote. Well, this one was Shining Legacy, the one that I just read from, that celebrates 12 Black heroes and heroines from St. and the Amistad, Toussaint Louverture, Demar Vesey, Harriet, Sojourner Truth, Garvey, Paul Robeson, Fannie Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks, Sean Coltrane, Malcolm X, etc., etc. And then I wrote The Adventures of Kojo and Alma. And the reason I wrote The Adventures of Kojo and Alma, because we grew up in the same time. They had the White, Dick, and Jane stories. Those were the little readers that taught us how to read. White, Dick, and Jane, and then it was Spot the dog. And they went on these little adventures and all like that. So I said, I need to change this narrative just a bit. So I came up with The Adventures of Kojo and Alma and their black cat, which brings good luck. And the black cat's name was Sheba the cat. And there were stories that basically how Kojo and Alma learn about their history, hear about the great people that came before them, and go on many adventures. And the stories are Sheba the cat, Danger in the Park After Dark, The Man with the Red, Black, and Green Cap, Smoking Flames, Fun in the Sun, Kings and Queens of the Nile, and Save the Land. And in all of my books, I have questions and work projects in the back, notes for the parent and the reader, and things along those lines. So again, these were teaching tools as well. And then the third book is 3 Tales of Wisdom. Again, just little tales. One is called Ayana, the Beautiful Flower, the tale of how Anansi's magic helped Ayana get to the Harvest Festival, despite the fact that her 2 sisters failed to follow the 7 principles of our new African value system. You know where that one came from. Another one was called A Marcus Garvey Story, the tale of how a young brother growing up in New York City learned the story of the mighty Marcus Garvey. And the third story in 3 Tales of Wisdom is Jabari's incredible journey, the tale of how Jabari gained wisdom through a proverb-rich journey filled with teachings from people and animals alike. Now, let me just tell you this, Brother Malik. These books have been out of print for a long time. They were written during the 80s or early 90s. When I found out last summer that they were on the banned books list of the Central York, Pennsylvania School District, I said, nah. I said, let me put these books back in print so they can be available for a new generation of leaders. So of readers who will become leaders. So they were on the banned book list. And so last year I put all 3 of them back in print. And the other one that was on the banned book list was a book, oh my God, so sorry. Called Reparations, Yes, a book I wrote in 1987. I co-authored it. I was a co-author with Imari Obadeli and Chokwe Lumumba. And it was called Reparations, Yes, Legal and Political Reasons Why New Africans, I forget, it's a long title, do reparations or whatever, and free the political prison and all like that. It's a long title. But that was on the banned book list as well. That was printed in 1987. This was before Nkoba was even founded. I'm a long trailblazer in this struggle. So I have a new book coming out called Reparations on Fire. Let's see if you can see it there. Reparations on Fire, How and Why It's Spreading Across America. It should be out very soon. And I am publishing the original text from the 1987 Reparations, Yes. I'm the only living author. Both Brother Chokwe Lumumba and Brother Mario Badeli are now ancestors. And I'm going to have it reprinted as an appendix to Reparations on Fire, How and Why It's Spreading across America. So those were the children's books. That was the reparations book. And then there's my memoir, Black Power, Black Lord. That was me when you met me, Malik. That I was like 20 years old then. Okay. How and why, my audacious quest for justice, Black Power, Black Lord. And I talk about CB in here. Malik, I don't know. You might be in here, Malik Yakini. I know it.
Don't be telling no lies on me now. Don't be telling.
Well, I don't know. You might not be, but I don't know because I see what's your Yakini. I'm on you. I don't know. Yep, you're on page 181. What did I say about you? You were on page 181, my brother.
Did you say bad stuff about me?
What did I say? I said TTI was a phenomenal experience spearheaded by Imani Humphrey of the Alexander Trumbull Center and Aisha Shule in Detroit. I met many people that summer of 1977, including Brother Malik Yakini, who went on to found his own independent Black school in Sonoma Institute, and years later became the architect of the Detroit Community Food Security Network.
Wow, I had no idea. So clearly I need to pick up the book. I didn't know I was in it.
African American Literature Book Club, AALBC, has a list of over 100 Black bookstores you can get it from. You can get it right from AALBC itself.
So I'm going to ask you to read just a little passage besides that passage you just read from that book, whatever you think might be interesting to the folks who are listening now about your personal journey.
Okay, so I'm going to choose something because this deals with me as a young lawyer, if I may, but it also deals with personal anxieties I might have had, and this whole thing about, well, I'm in the mainstream now, I'm a lawyer, but I'm still a revolutionary. Okay, and so I'm going to read a little excerpt from this. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. It was 1988, and I had recently gone into the private practice of law. I was 33, a bit older than most new lawyers, having gone to law school at age 27, as opposed to right out of undergrad school, because, I became a teacher in independent Black schools. Okay, anyway. I was representing indigent clients in fairly routine cases, such as drug possession and simple assault, slowly building my law practice. I already had standing in the community as a revolutionary activist. My goal now was to gain a professional reputation in the legal arena. Then, one day, I received a consequential phone call. Sister Nkechi, this is Ahmed. Hey, brother, free the land. I greeted him enthusiastically with the salutation of the new African independence movement. Sis, you heard about the indictment? Yes, I knew what he was talking about. The U.S. Capitol building had been bombed after the U.S. invasion of Grenada several years earlier, and suspects had just been arrested. It was all over the news, but I had no details. Laura Whitehorn wants to talk to you. Who? I quizzed, oblivious to the name. Laura, she's one of the defendants in the case. I really only knew the name of one of the suspects, Marilyn Buck, who had just been convicted in the daring liberation of Sister Assata Shakur from prison years earlier. Talk about a modern day underground railroad. Oh, yes, Laura, I replied as if I knew exactly who she was. She wants to talk to me? Yes, she wants you to be her lawyer, he stated matter-of-factly. How ridiculous can you get? I thought, a major RICO criminal conspiracy case in federal court? The proposition sounded ludicrous. No way. Didn't I recently embarrass myself at my first jury trial? And quiet as it was kept, I was trying to balance my political work with my legal career. Quite frankly, I was apprehensive about meshing these two worlds this early in my career. This was years before the internet, before Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. One could basically remain anonymous if one chose to, except, of course, from FBI surveillance. Despite my earlier years of Black power salutes and revolutionary Black activism, I was trying to keep a low profile. I was a professional now with an American Express credit card. I was trying to enter the legal mainstream, attempting to move away or at least downplay my presence in quote unquote the movement. Of course, I revealed none of this to Brother Ahmed, who I considered the epitome of the revolutionary's revolutionary. But Ahmed's call made it clear that the struggle was not going to let me go. And in my heart, I knew I was not ready to leave it either. Coming to terms with this, I realized I could not abandon the principles of righteousness I had believed in and fought for most of my life. I mean, Wasn't this the reason I wanted to be a lawyer in the first place? Wasn't it my dream to be a people's lawyer, a revolutionary lawyer? Wasn't it my inspiration to defend political prisoners and prisoners of war? But these are white political prisoners. A small voice inside me kept piping up. I took a deep breath. Okay, white revolutionaries. I didn't know nothing about white people revolutionaries. I'd heard of the John Brown Anti-Klan Committee. I've heard of the May 19th organization, Weather Underground Students for a Democratic Society, Prairie Fire Organizing Committee, but I had no previous interactions or dealings with white supporters of the Black liberation movement, despite their whispered associations with the struggle. I was DC born and bred, Black cultural nationalist revolutionary, organizing in the Black community alongside other Black people since my high school days. Nkechi, Ahmed shouted impatiently into the phone, jolted me back to consciousness. Laura Whitehorn's the lead defendant in the case, he added quickly. She wants a conscious Black attorney. She wants a revolutionary Black attorney. She wants you. Lord have mercy. Little old new lawyer me who after years of being on the cutting edge of revolutionary action was pathetically trying to be a quote unquote good Negro and a quote unquote responsible lawyer. But despite the goosebumps, stomach gurgling, and a shitload of reservations, I told Ahmed, yes, I'll talk to Laura, I said. I knew without a doubt that I had to rise to the occasion. An ancestral voice inside my head said, Nkechi, you can do this. You must do this. That was the chapter, but they are white revolutionaries. So yes, I did represent her. She got 20 years, but it was a victory because their whole defense was my client was the only person not currently serving a sentence for anything. Everybody else was currently serving sentences for revolutionary acts. And so we were able, through her conviction, to get other people off. One person, Alan Berkman, was dying from cancer. Two other people were able to get their charges completely dropped. And Laura has been home now for several decades. And even though she spent several decades, we're talking about protracted struggle, and is doing phenomenal work in the struggle.
So you've been incredibly involved in working on behalf of political prisoners and prisoners of war. I wonder first if you could distinguish for us, what is the difference between a political prisoner and a prisoner of war? Who are some of the political prisoners and prisoners of war still incarcerated, and why should this issue still be important to us?
Well, those still incarcerated, I'm just going to name a couple. First and foremost, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, who actually was co-defendant of Marilyn Buck, who was a defendant in the case I talked about as well. Mine was a co-defendant case. He has been given a mere months to live. Mutulu was convicted of being the mastermind of this, the liberation of Assata Shakur. Everybody talks about Assata, but they forget about the people who are still serving prison time, of which Mutulu is the only person still serving a sentence with respect to that. There is Veronza Bowers, who should have been out just eons ago. He's still incarcerated. Of course, there is Mumia Abu Jamal, who should never have gone to prison in the first place. We recently just brought Sundiata Akoli home. People's victory, astronomically. We have to bring Geronimo Gijaga home. Again, someone else who was victim of COINTELPRO unjustly, incarcerated. And there's so many more as well. So in terms of difference between political prisoner and prisoner of war, well, they're varying definitions, okay? But there are people who have adamantly stated that they are not citizens of the United States. They are citizens of the new African nation and of the United States, which has been waging a war of genocide through its COINTELPRO and other machinations against Black people. And any response that they were doing, or their capture or their arrest, was a result of legitimate resistance to that war of genocide being raised. And they claim that they are prisoners of war. And in fact, we filed a prisoner of war brief in Mutulu Shakur's case. Again, I'm a young lawyer at the time. Chokwe Lumumba, the elder, was his lawyer at the time. And he asked me to do the legal research and writing on the POW brief that we submitted. This was the first time that I know of that a federal judge actually required the Department of State, the Department of Army, the Justice Department, and some other agencies to actually respond to our POW brief. Of course, it was denied as frivolous and the like, but they were required to actually issue a response to that. A political prisoner is a more general category. Sometimes the two are meshed together. It can be very, very broad in terms of, all Black people with mass incarceration, political prison, or more specific in terms of those who have engaged in acts as a response to the oppression that's been going on in this country, who were viciously framed, or who became revolutionized inside the prison, went in as common, I don't want to say criminals, I forgot what it's, whatever, such as George Jackson, who came into the system not as a political person, but as a result of being subjected to mass incarceration. The system read and learned and studied, and he became a revolutionary and a political prisoner. So we are, again, still fighting to free our brothers and sisters who answered the call when we said something must be done about all of this, madness. We must struggle for those who struggle for us, just as we lift up. Back in the day, I stood outside of the South African embassy, I don't know how many times, calling for freedom for Nelson Mandela. Went to prison, not really. I mean, we detained for a couple of hours with plastic cuffs, and had our legal observers right there, and they had all the charges dropped. But I mean, I'm just saying, we did that for political prisoners of other nations. We don't do the same for our own, and we must do that.
Thank you so much for your commitment to our political prisoners and prisoners of war. In just a minute, we're going to open up for the other folks on the line to ask you questions. But I always like doing this with guests on this webinar. And this is some speed questions, a speed round. I'm just going to shoot some questions to you, and I want a quick answer. You game for that?
Yes, I am. I'm just looking at the chat. I don't know if the chat is live for everybody. I'm just looking, but okay, go on.
Okay, so
right.
Ready? You ready?
Yeah, I hate this, but go on. Isn't this a game show? What do I win?
There's no prize. You don't win anything. But here we go. Sarah Vaughan or Dinah Washington?
Sarah Vaughan.
Right, all right. The Temptations or Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes?
Oh, damn. Oh, this was hard. Oh, I can't do this. Well, I gotta go with the Temptations. I can't do this.
All right. That's the correct answer, by the way. The Temptations is the right answer.
Okay.
I'm from Detroit, so we go all.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've been to Motown.
Okay. Third and last question. Rakim or KRS-One?
Oh, see, I don't know the hip hop stuff. I can't.
The old hip hop stuff, right?
No, because when the old hip hop stuff was going on, I was still dealing with Gil Heron, and Last Poets and Nikki Giovanni and all like that. So I wasn't even, so yeah, I'll say KRS-One, but go on. That might be the wrong answer.
No, that's the right answer also.
Okay. Yeah.
So thank you for subjecting yourself to that. One more question before we open up to the folks on the line. Do you write like in legal pads? Some people write with still pen and paper, or do you write directly on computer initially? Or do you
well, when I first started writing, wasn't no computers, wasn't no internet, or none of that.
Now?
So
how do you do it now?
And I didn't have no legal pads. This was before I was a lawyer, so I would write, and that's how I did my memoir, because I had so much writings that I had every single paper that I wrote in high school, some from junior high school, and college. I just kind of kept stuff. So all of that was written before there was an IBM Selectric typewriter before. I'm just saying. So now that there's a computer, I do my stuff on the computer, but I have to print it out. I'm a tactile person. I have to feel it. And, I like to make my corrections in bed or whatever on paper that I've typed or whatever, printed out. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I know you're an environmentalist. And oh my gosh, my daughter says, I've made it so that there's no future for the young people because I've killed so many trees. And I know this, and it has to do with the way I have to have it in my hand.
Yeah.
I have to have it in my hand, but I do write it on the computer. But there are a lot of trees. Yeah. How can I atone for that, my brother?
I don't think you need to atone. We're all holding many contradictions.
Okay.
And we struggle through capitalism and white supremacy and trying to get sovereignty.
Yes.
So we're going to open up, and I hope the Q&A in the chat is working properly. If you have a question for Sister Nkechi, please indicate in the chat that you want to ask that question. And Sister Zanzela, who's handling the back of the house functions, hopefully can bring you up and you can ask that question. So there's a question from Todd Burrows. He says, talk about your books being banned if you haven't already. You did mention that.
Yeah, I talked about that. Yeah, he might not have gotten back on by then, but that was a pivotal moment when I saw that. I mean, I was absolutely shocked. How they even know about these books, because they've been out of print for years. I'm saying, but the Central York School District saw fit to ban them, and I took that opportunity to bring them back out in print so that they can, again, be there for the next generation of young people and older people as well.
So again, if you have questions or comments for Sister Nkechi, please put them in the chat or put in the chat that you like to ask the question and we can bring you up. You can ask it directly. While we're waiting for more questions, I'll ask a couple more. So you have a daughter. How old is your daughter?
Well, I was a late mama. So my daughter's 28. So while most of her friends, it's like, I know they're her friends' grandmothers. I just barely made it into mamahood, shall we say. And I'm so blessed that I did. So she's 28 years old.
Is your daughter a writer?
Sometimes, and I think that she's going to blossom into one. She has so many great ideas. I've sneaked and seen some of the stuff I'm not supposed to know about. Yeah, so I guess we'll see what the future holds for that.
Okay, Shiwana P. Moore asked, did you self-publish?
Okay, so we call it independently published these days. So yes, all of my books are independently published. I try to make them available for Black bookstores. Of course, they are on the colonialist enterprise, Amazon, but I tried it. Like I said, if you go to aalbc.com, that stands for African American Literature Book Club, and put my name in, all my books will show up, as well as pre-orders for my book that should be out soon called Reparations on Fire.
Thank you. So a couple other questions. Elsie Swan says, do you still find joy in writing?
Look, I have a book that I've been wanting to write since I was teaching in independent Black school. I have the title for it. I've started it. I've almost finished it, but I just haven't had a chance to pull it together. It's called Aisha and the Magic Ankh. Yeah, and I really want to. It's just that, life happens. I'm a lawyer trying to advance reparations, do political prisoners, prison of war. It's just so much that I just don't get a chance to get back to my love, but I do love that. I don't consider myself a writer. I never went to school for writing or anything along those lines. In fact, even Kirkus Book Review, one of the major book review companies, said my book was great book, excellent, all like that, but it was cumbersome. I put too much all up in there, you know what I mean? And I understood that. So my book, Black Power, Black Lawyer, My Audacious Quest for Justice, will be coming out again, hopefully before the end of the year, a revised edition to make it a little bit less cumbersome, but still keeping all of my authenticity and stuff up in there as well.
So a few more questions. Sarah Staton says, how do you remain empowered to do all that you do?
How do I remain empowered? Well, I just consider part of this is my mission in life, to do all the things that I do. And that's why I continue doing the things that I do. because I think that was part of my contract with the creator before I came to this earthly plane.
Ivory Williams out of Detroit says, how can you get adults to read?
Well, you know, interesting. My children's books, I call them children's books for young people, but a whole lot of adults were reading these. And actually, it's interesting. You know, I said that Sundiata Kohli, we've been in prison nearly 50 years. 50 years. He's kind of followed me on all of my journeys. And when Shining Legacy first came out in '83, he said he really, really liked it, but he thought that some of the concepts were a little bit advanced for children. And he was passing around the prison. So a lot of adults get a lot out of the children's books even that I write. So I mean, how do you get adults to read? Well, one thing is most of the time they're reading to the children or right there with the young people where they're writing. That's why in the back there are notes for the parents and teachers and for the children, because just like movies that are out there for young children cannot go to the movies. Their mothers or their fathers or some adult is going to take them. So they have to be something in those children's movies, those Disney movies and all like that, that's going to capture the attention of adults. And I know when my daughter was young, and you know, I saw Mulan, I probably would never have seen that. I mean, you know, it's just, you know, little things that even captured my attention when and then there's some stuff that have negative images as well, but you know, it is what it is.
Sister Lacey Dawson out of Detroit says, such a beautiful spirit. Thank you so much for what you've done. How do we encourage more folk, specifically the younger generation, to go into law and to study with a lens for liberation? And will you be in Detroit doing a book signing at the Detroit Food Commons, this new building that we're building? Please put in the chat where we can get all of your books. And I think she said a couple times where the books are available, and also her sister Zanzele has put her website in the chat. But how about the rest of that? Will you be
okay? Yes. Oh, I'd love to come to Detroit, whatever the Food Commons invite me.
All right.
Actually, I should be in. I was supposed to be in Detroit at the beginning of October. I'm not going to be able to be there. The National Council of Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls are having a conference in Detroit, but I'm not going to be able to make it there this year. But I've loved Detroit. I was in Detroit a whole lot during the 70s and early 80s, being involved with the New African Independence you know, movement. There was a question, oh, how do I get young people going to law? Well, that's one of the reasons why I wrote Black Power, Black Lawyer. Okay. And I'm hoping that this encourages young people, particularly those who aren't interested in being the traditional type of lawyer, who's interested in being social justice lawyer, or people's lawyer, revolutionary lawyer, that you can in fact do it and you know, and succeed and all like that. So my book is like a map towards that. Also, there is an organization, a woman named Evangeline Mitchell, who has this Black Pre-Law Institute, that every year she has great, huge convenings. They've been virtual for the last couple of years for Black students in particular who are interested in going to law. I've spoken at that convention on a number of occasions. Evangeline Mitchell, I'll put her name, Evangeline Mitchell. And she has some books out dealing with that too. What I said, Black Pre-Law Conference. And I don't know if someone put my thing, www.Nkechi Taifa.
Yes, that's in there.
.org. Okay, it's in that .org or .com. That has all of my books, links to where you can get them, and it has loads of videos. I got lots of stuff. So it's on what I call the Nkechi Taifa experience. That's on that website, nkechitaifa.org or .com.
So Sister Nkiruka has a question. We want to try to pull her up if that's possible. And while we're waiting for her to appear, Sister Tanisha Burton says, thank you. This was awesome. What advice do you have for children who want to get started in writing?
Oh, to don't put it off, to put your thoughts down on paper, because what might be a seed one day that you don't know where it's going to lead, At another time, it might just pop into your head. I know when I wrote my books, my children's books back in the day, that my independent school day, I don't know where it came from. It's like, it just happened. The word, it was like ancestral spirit speaking through me, honestly, seriously. And that motivation, that inspiration, it's different for everybody. There are some people, or some children, some young people who are actually trained to go to workshops, who have classes and things along those lines. And then others, it's just kind of like ancestral. Yeah, so the advice would be, don't put it off. If you feel that inspiration, get it down. The reason why Aisha and the Magic Arc is still sticking with me, I still have those little scraps of paper, with the themes. And interesting, it was long before I knew anything about Tulsa. I have to change it now because everybody's going to think I took it from Tulsa. But the place where Aisha and them lived was called Greenwood. I mean, that was what the Greenwood District. I mean, it's like, I didn't know anything about things like that then. And so anyway, yeah.
Okay, Sister Nkiruka has a question. We're having trouble promoting her to be able to speak directly. So she asked that I read the question. What do you think about those brothers and sisters that are incarcerated, that are not involved in our political struggle, but clearly are suffering from cognitive dissonance, living while Black in America, and committed crimes that demonstrated a level of rebellion against the oppressive system?
So my career, basically, outside of being a revolutionary, has been criminal legal system transformation. Okay, dealing with our brothers and sisters not socially conscious, might commit social crimes, and are incarcerated, might be drug addicted, and the like. I've been fighting against mass incarceration. The type of sentences that people get are just absolutely horrific, out of line with every other country in the world. This mass incarceration has decimated not only people, but families and children and the like. And that's one of the main things I've been struggling against professionally as a lawyer. And then when people come out of prison, they are stacked with all sorts of restrictions and obstacles into re-entering into society. And oftentimes there's no other recourse that they have than to go back into committing atrocities or social crimes that gets them right back into prison, and that cycle happens again. And there's so many dots that are connected. That's a main reason why there's not in terms of the Black male, Black female ratio, in terms of partners that we as Black women have. Where are the men? They're in prison. And not just where are the men. Now Black women are the fastest growing demographic in the criminal punishment system. So what do? We need to be patient with folks. We need to show by example. Many times, I mean, even if you saw the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, dealing with Fred Hampton, he went through to and worked with people who were in gangs and things along those lines, and trying to transform, as George Jackson said, that Black criminal mentality into a Black revolutionary mentality. Many people, if just given the chance, would do the right thing. If you're given the chance with the right type of opportunities, and then many times you wouldn't find them engaged in socially destructive behavior. If the neighborhoods, with the way they should be, the housing, I mean, all of it is connected. The redlining, that went on. I mean, it's all connected, even back the dots to the enslavement era. It's almost like an unbroken chain. There were crimes committed against us as a people. Okay, and those in just about every case, Black men could not respond the way a normal human being should have been able to respond to the atrocities that were committed against Black women and against their mothers and their grandmothers and their little babies and their children. Okay, that stuff travels in our genes. So even today, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not a psychologist or anything along those lines, but even unconsciously, maybe we take those things out against ourselves, our brothers and sisters, people who look like us, because of the power structure. You can't get to whoever it is that, in terms of the powers that be, that such actions that they're going to be taken should be taken against. We lash out at who we see, and the only people we see are people in our neighborhood. So I don't know. I didn't mean to be on my high horse there, but
no, it's good. This is your show. You can talk as much as you want. So Sister Shoshana says, I know you met some great and wonderful people on your journey in life, but if you could invite 5 guests, 5 ancestors to be guests over for a dinner chat, who would you invite and why?
Well, I have had the honor of having dinner at Brother Mario Bedelli's mama's house in Philadelphia, sitting alongside with Minister Louis Farrakhan, at the time. I mean, I have a picture with Queen Mother Moore, with holding my infant daughter in her arms, with Rosa Parks holding my infant daughter in her arms. I would have liked to have had lunch or dinner, with them, I guess you could say. But let me go back in history. To some people, the names I named might be history. But going back a little bit further, I would like to, I don't know. I would say Aikwe Amar, and that's not back in history, but I say Aikwe Amar because he wrote the book that just really it just had such an impact on me. 2000 Seasons. I remember when I first read that book, I said, oh my God. After I got through that first part, that flowery, long, winding part, where it was just phenomenal. Then, of course, I went back and read that long, flowering part because it made a whole lot of sense after that. But 2000 Seasons, Aikwe Amar would be one. We said Queen and Zinga, hey, about the Portuguese and all like that. That would be 2. I would say a trio. I'd like to sit down dinner with a trio with Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, and Christophe, okay, who were the liberators of what later became known as Haiti. What number am I at now? Marcus Garvey. Did I do 5 already?
That trio made 5, but we always got room for Mr. Garvey, so go ahead.
Yeah, I say with the Honorable Marcus Garvey, particularly since I found out late in life that my grandfather was a Garvey. I had the uniform. My eldest cousin said when they marched, he marched too. I didn't even know that much when I wrote my memoir. I just knew that my uncle always talked about Garvey and had shares in the Black Star Line. I didn't know that my grandfather, meaning my uncle's father, my grandfather, who I never knew because he died when I was too young, was actually part of the Black Legionnaires. Woo!
Tremendous history. So if you had to recommend 3 must-read Black books to the person watching this webinar, what would those, and I know it's hard to narrow it down to 3.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, so, well, I'll say the books that, I'm going to go with a very small pamphlet, but I say it's a must-read. The Crest Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism, Dr. Francis Crest.
That little black and white pamphlet from the 70s.
Actually, it's right there. I don't know if you can.
I can see it. I see
it in my way. There it is. Yeah, I keep it up. Yeah, the Crest Theory, I would say that is one. The Autobiography of Malcolm X. These are books that just were very meaningful to me. I mean, I don't know how to say it any other kind of way, shape, form, or fashion. And I'm going to go with my political mentor, okay, Amari Abubakar Obedelli, Foundations of the Black Nation. You probably really won't find it anywhere now. I don't know if I'm sure it's not in print, but I'm sure somebody will. Maybe it's bootleg print, or maybe somebody will bring it out in print. But Foundations of the Black Nation, because it laid out the epitome of the new African independence movement, the movement that uses as its slogan, "Free the Land."
Do you know that Imari Obedelli lived about 4 blocks from me when I was in elementary school, and his son and I went to elementary school together?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he lived in the same neighborhood. My mother worked at the post office, and he used to bring his book, War in America, to the post office to mail it out all around the country.
Oh, I know all about that. Yup. I'm like, Born America, the Malcolm X Doctrines. Put that one on the list as well. Yeah, thank you for that. Wow. I did not know that.
So we are winding down. By the way, somebody in the chat said, don't feel guilty about the paper that you're using. Let me see if I can find that comment exactly. Shawana says, I started using steno pads, then moved to 5-subject notebooks. Please don't beat up on yourself for using paper.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Ivory Williams said, this has been great. Thank you for you blessing us with your time and knowledge. Let's see. I think those are about all. Oh, one other. How do you handle driving while Black while traveling in southern states? I think somebody trying to ask you, do you be strapped?
Oh.
Just kidding.
I'm not going to answer that one.
I know you wouldn't.
But let's just say that I used to be the secretary for NAT Incorporated. NAT stood for New African Arms Training. I'll just leave it at that.
Ms. Moore, that's where we go leave it at. Ain't gonna say no more. So as we end up, I'm just wondering, what advice do you have for people who might be considering writing, or people who are unpublished writers? Maybe they have a little knack for it, but feel like, oh, this is not for me. I can't really do it. What advice do you have for folks?
My advice is to do it. Okay. And don't worry about what others think. And particularly if you have a personal story that you know ain't nobody going to write, which is again why I vote Black Power, Black Lawyer, because no one could write it the way I was going to write it, because I voted from personal experience. Okay. Just like Shoshana. She'll talk about her own story as part of her story about her brother, Chokwe Lumumba. There will be many people, I'm sure, who will be writing about the great revolutionary lawyer, Chokwe Lumumba, but no one can write about it like someone who actually lived with him and grew up with him. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah. The thing is, just do it, because you might be feeling a void that might never get filled if you don't. When Professor Greg Carr wrote the foreword to my book, he said, to too many of us, too many people left this great plane without putting in their own words their life down on paper. Too many of our elders, our ancestors. Where's your book, Malik Yakini? Your book, and maybe it is there. I don't know. Tell me.
It's not there yet, but it's coming.
It's got to come. And it's got to come sooner rather than later, because we don't know. You know how much time we have on this earthly plane, so just do it. Yes, be inspired. And I still have some that I'm trying to spit out that I need to just go on and finish and get out as well. In fact, Black Power, Black Lawyer, I had said that book was going to come out when I was 50 years old. Mm-hmm. I'm now closer to 70 than I am to 60. And it came out 2 years ago, finally. But I was adamant that I just needed to go on and do it, even though it took decades longer. Most of the book was about before I was 30 years old. I had scraps of paper, all of that stuff, the Black Power part of it was my early life. You know what I'm saying? So anyway.
So thank you so much for joining us. Anything you want to end with before we wrap up?
I just want to really thank you. I want to thank you for initiating, or the group that initiated the Black Reading Month, September as Black Reading Month. I'm honored to be the kickoff author for Black Reading Month, particularly in light of the names that I saw that preceded me. And I know Michael Simanga is going to be coming soon. So I'm honored and thrilled to be, part of that pantheon.
So again, thank you, Sister Nkechi. We appreciate it greatly. We want to thank Sister Zenzele, who is behind the scenes handling the back of house functions. We want to thank all of the participants who joined us. This is going to be available on YouTube and on Facebook on the September's Black Reading Month Facebook page. So those things will be up in a couple of days. We'll encourage you to share those widely so that those who weren't here with us live today can still benefit from Sister Nkechi's wisdom. And then as she mentioned, next week, Michael Simanga will be hosting September 14th, same time, 7 o'clock p.m. He'll be talking to Dr. Keith Gilliard, who studies language as used by Black people and has written several books on that. I'm sure you find that to be a stimulating conversation. So again, we want to thank you for joining. Thank you, Sister Nkechi. Thank you, Sisters Nzele. Thank you, all the participants, for joining. We hope to see you next Wednesday at 7 o'clock for September's Black Reading Month 2022, excuse me, Author Talk #2. Peace.